The train station was loud, but not in a happy way. Shoes scraped against wet concrete. Trains screamed as they slowed. Voices echoed through the cold evening air, rushing past like nobody had time to notice anyone else. On a metal bench near platform 4 sat a little girl and her mother. The girl's feet barely touched the ground. Her shoes were worn at the toes, and her yellow sweater looked 2 winters too old. She swung her legs slowly, counting the tiles on the floor like it was a game. 1, 2, 3, trying not to think about how hungry she was. Her name was Lily. She was 7 years old. Beside her sat her mother, Sarah, clutching a small backpack so tightly her knuckles had turned white. Inside that bag was everything they had left. A change of clothes, important papers, and hope, thin, fragile hope. Sarah hadn't slept in 2 nights. The eviction notice was still folded in her coat pocket, even though there was no home left to return to. Tonight's train was taking them to another city, where Sarah had an interview the next morning. If she didn't get that job, she didn't allow herself to finish the thought. Lily reached into her pocket and pulled out a crumpled $5 bill. She smoothed it carefully on her knee, pressing down the wrinkles like it was something precious. Because it was. That $5 was meant for dinner. Maybe a sandwich they could split. Maybe hot chocolate if they were lucky. Sarah noticed and swallowed hard. "Sweetheart," she said softly, brushing Lily's hair back. "Put that away. We'll eat later." Lily nodded, but she didn't put it away. Because she had noticed something else. A few seats down, a man sat completely still. He looked out of place, not because he was rich or important, but because he looked empty. His coat was plain. His shoes were dusty. His shoulders were slumped like the weight of the world had finally won. In his hand was a phone. On the screen was a picture of a little boy, smiling wide, missing 1 front tooth. The man stared at that photo like it was the only thing keeping him breathing. Lily tilted her head. "Mommy," she whispered, tugging on Sarah's sleeve. "That man looks sad." Sarah glanced over, then looked away quickly. She'd learned the hard way that you couldn't fix everyone. Sometimes you couldn't even fix yourself. "Lots of people are sad here, baby," she replied gently. But Lily kept watching. She saw the man wipe his eyes with the back of his hand when he thought no one was looking. She saw his shoulders shake just a little. She saw the loneliness that adults tried so hard to hide. Lily looked down at the $5 again. Then she slid off the bench. Before Sarah could stop her, Lily walked across the platform, her small steps echoing between rushing feet and rolling suitcases. She stopped in front of the man. He didn't notice her at first, so Lily held out her hand. "Excuse me, sir," she said in her small, steady voice. The man looked up, startled. For a moment, he just stared at her. This tiny stranger with kind eyes and mismatched socks. "Yes?" he asked quietly. Lily placed the $5 bill into his hand and wrapped his fingers around it like she was afraid he might refuse. "You can have this," she said. "It's my last money." The man froze. "I know," he said quickly. "I can't take that from you." Lily shook her head, serious. "My mom says when people are hurting, sharing helps. You look like your heart hurts." The station noise faded. The man's throat tightened. He hadn't heard words like that in years. "I'm Lily," she added. "What's your name?" "Daniel," he managed to say, his voice rough. "Hi, Daniel," Lily smiled. "I hope you feel better." Then, just like that, she turned and walked back to her mother. Light, unburdened, unaware of what she had just done. Sarah stood up, panic flashing across her face. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry," she said quickly to Daniel. She didn't understand. Daniel stood too, holding the bill like it was made of glass. "No," he interrupted softly. "Please, it's okay." Their eyes met for a brief moment. Sarah saw something there. Grief so deep it scared her. Before she could say more, the loudspeaker crackled. "Now boarding train 814 to Northbridge." Passengers surged forward. Sarah grabbed Lily's hand and joined the crowd, her heart pounding. Behind them, Daniel remained standing on the platform. He looked down at the $5 bill. That money wasn't charity. It was kindness in its purest form. And as he folded it carefully and slipped it into his pocket, Daniel Carter, the billionaire CEO who owned half the skyline of 3 cities, felt something break open inside his chest. For the first time since his wife's funeral, he didn't feel completely alone. The train doors hissed open. Fate stepped aboard. Daniel boarded the train at the very last second. The doors slid shut behind him with a heavy thud, sealing in the warm air, the low hum of conversation, and the quiet pull of something he didn't yet understand. He stood in the aisle for a moment, steadying himself, his fingers still brushing the pocket where the $5 bill rested. He hadn't planned to get on this train. He hadn't planned anything at all. But something about that little girl's eyes, so calm, so certain, had pulled him forward before his mind could catch up. Daniel found an empty seat a few rows behind Lily and her mother. Sarah helped Lily climb into the window seat. Lily pressed her nose to the glass, watching the station lights blur as the train began to move. She looked back once, scanning the aisle, and when she spotted Daniel, her face lit up. She waved. Daniel hesitated, then lifted his hand and waved back. It felt strange, natural, dangerous. He leaned back and closed his eyes, and suddenly the train station disappeared. 3 years earlier, Daniel Carter's life had been splashed across every business magazine in the country. Young billionaire CEO, visionary, widower. They never wrote about the nights he sat alone in his mansion, staring at the ceiling because sleep wouldn't come. They never mentioned how the silence after his wife's laughter vanished was louder than any boardroom. After his wife died, Daniel had buried himself in work. When that stopped helping, he left. No assistants. No suits. No private jets. Just a regular train ticket, a coat that didn't draw attention, and a desperate need to remember who he was before money decided everything. His son, Noah, was staying with Daniel's sister for a few weeks. "You can't disappear forever," she told him gently. "But you can breathe." So Daniel had come here. Into crowds, into noise, into real life. And then a 7-year-old girl gave him her last $5. The train rocked gently as it picked up speed. Lily turned in her seat and whispered loudly to her mother, "Mommy, that man is on our train." Sarah followed her gaze and stiffened slightly when she saw Daniel. She gave him a polite, unsure smile, the kind you give strangers when you don't know whether to trust them or not. Daniel nodded respectfully and looked away, not wanting to make her uncomfortable. Minutes passed. An hour. The sky outside darkened, city lights giving way to long stretches of black. Lily's stomach growled loudly. She pressed her lips together, embarrassed. Sarah noticed and felt the familiar ache of guilt. She rummaged through the backpack and pulled out a half-empty bottle of water. "Just a little longer, okay?" she whispered. Lily nodded, brave as always. Daniel heard it all. He stood up, walked slowly toward the cafe car, and returned a few minutes later with 2 small paper bags and a cup of juice. He stopped beside Sarah's seat. "Excuse me," he said carefully. "They were about to throw these away. Would you mind?" Sarah looked at the bags. Sandwiches. Warm. Real. "Oh, I couldn't. It would actually help me," Daniel said, quickly honest. "I don't like eating alone." Lily looked up at her mother with hopeful eyes. Sarah hesitated, then nodded. "Thank you." Daniel handed Lily the juice first. Her eyes widened like it was Christmas. "Thank you, Daniel," she said brightly, already sipping. Daniel smiled before he could stop himself. They ate quietly, sharing the small space like people who had known each other much longer than an hour. "So," Lily said suddenly, crumbs on her lips, "do you have a kid?" Daniel froze. Sarah shot her daughter a warning look. "Lily." "It's okay," Daniel said softly. He reached into his coat and pulled out his phone, hesitating before turning the screen. "I have a son. His name is Noah." Lily leaned closer, studying the picture. "He looks nice," she said. "A little sad, though." Daniel swallowed. "Yeah," he admitted. "He is." Lily smiled gently. "He probably misses you." That night, after Lily fell asleep with her head on her mother's shoulder, Sarah quietly apologized. She talks too much, she said. But she means well. Daniel shook his head. She says exactly what matters. Sarah studied him in the dim train light. You don't sound like someone who's struggling for money. Daniel met her eyes honestly. I'm struggling in other ways. Sarah nodded. She understood that kind of struggle. As the train rolled on, Daniel stared out the window, the $5 bill warm in his pocket. For the first time in years, he wasn't running from his pain. He was sitting right beside it. And somewhere in the gentle breathing of a sleeping child and the quiet strength of a tired mother, Daniel felt the beginning of something he thought he'd lost forever. Not love, but connection. The train raced forward into the night, carrying 4 lives closer than any of them yet realized. The train slowed with a long metallic sigh as it pulled into Northbridge Station. Morning light slipped through the windows, pale and uncertain, like it wasn't sure it was welcome yet. Passengers stretched, gathered bags, and prepared to scatter back into their separate lives. Lily rubbed her eyes and sat up. "Mommy," she whispered. "Are we there?" Sarah nodded, forcing a smile she hoped looked braver than she felt. "Yes, baby. This is it." Her stomach twisted. Northbridge was where the interview was. Northbridge was also where her money ran out. Daniel watched them quietly from a few seats away. He saw Sarah count the coins in her palm, once, twice, then close her hand like she could hide the truth from herself. Not enough for breakfast. Not enough for a bus. Definitely not enough for a place to sleep if the interview went badly. As the doors opened, cold air rushed in. Daniel stood. "Can I help you carry that?" he asked, gesturing to Sarah's bag. She hesitated, then nodded. "Thank you." They stepped onto the platform together. Northbridge Station was smaller, quieter, but no kinder. People hurried past, wrapped in their own worries. A coffee shop glowed at the corner of the platform, the smell drifting toward them like a cruel joke. Lily inhaled deeply. "That smells amazing," she said. Daniel didn't wait this time. "There's a diner across the street," he said casually. "I was heading there anyway. Would you like to join me?" Sarah opened her mouth to refuse, habit more than pride, but Lily's hopeful eyes stopped her. "We don't want to be a burden," Sarah said carefully. Daniel shook his head. "You're not. I promise." The diner was small and warm, with cracked vinyl booths and a bell that jingled when they entered. Lily slid into the booth like she belonged there. Daniel ordered simple food. Nothing fancy. Pancakes, eggs, toast. When the plates arrived, Lily stared like it was something magical. "Mom," she whispered. "It's so much." Sarah's eyes burned, but she smiled. "Eat, sweetheart." They ate slowly, savoring every bite. For the first time in days, Lily laughed. Daniel watched them, his chest tight. This was what the $5 had bought him. Not food. Not guilt. Perspective. After breakfast, Sarah checked her phone. Her interview was in less than 2 hours. And across town. She stood, panic creeping back in. "We should go." Daniel hesitated, then said, "I know a place nearby. Safe. Clean. You can rest there before your interview." Sarah stiffened. "I can't accept that." "You're not accepting," Daniel replied gently. "You're borrowing." She looked at Lily. Lily looked back at her, trusting as ever. Sarah exhaled. "Okay. Just for a little while." The hotel wasn't luxurious, but it was warm. Clean sheets. Hot water. Lily pressed her face into the pillow and giggled. "Mom, it's so soft." While Lily rested, Sarah sat on the edge of the bed, hand shaking. She looked at Daniel. "Why are you doing this?" He didn't answer right away. "Because once," he said finally, "someone gave me something when they had nothing." Sarah understood. Later, while Sarah got ready for her interview, Lily sat beside Daniel on the bed, swinging her legs. "Daniel," she asked softly, "did my $5 really help you?" He met her gaze. "Yes," he said. "It reminded me who I want to be." Lily smiled, satisfied. As Sarah left for the interview, fear heavy in her steps, Daniel stayed behind with Lily. He made a call. Not to his assistant. Not to his board. To a hotel manager he trusted. "Make sure they're comfortable," he said quietly. "No questions." When Sarah returned hours later, her eyes were red, but she was smiling. "I think I got it," she whispered. Lily squealed and hugged her. Daniel watched from the doorway, heart full and aching all at once. That night, Lily fell asleep between clean sheets, clutching a paper napkin she'd drawn a picture on, a train, a family, and 4 stick figures holding hands. Daniel stood by the window, looking out at the city lights. Kindness had come back to him. And it was only just beginning. The morning air at Northbridge Station felt different. Sharper. Heavier. Sarah held Lily's hand as they walked toward the platform, her heart pounding, not with fear this time, but with something fragile and unfamiliar. Hope. She had the job. Not officially yet, but the interviewer's smile, the firm handshake, the words, "We'll be in touch very soon." They all echoed in her mind like a promise she was afraid to believe. Lily skipped beside her. "Mommy," she said happily, "today feels like a good day." Sarah smiled. "It does, doesn't it?" Daniel walked a few steps behind them, quieter than usual. He knew this was the moment. They reached the platform just as the distant sound of engines echoed through the station. A few other passengers waited nearby, half asleep, clutching coffee cups. Then it happened. The low rumble grew louder. Not a train, but cars. Black cars. 3 of them. They pulled up right outside the station entrance, smooth and silent, doors opening in perfect timing. Men in dark coats stepped out, scanning the area with practiced eyes. Sarah stopped walking. Her grip on Lily's hand tightened. "Daniel," she whispered, uneasy. One of the men spotted him immediately and hurried over. "Mr. Carter," he said respectfully, "we've been looking everywhere for you." The world seemed to freeze. Lily looked up at Daniel, confused. "Are you in trouble?" Daniel exhaled slowly. "No, sweetheart," he said gently. "I just didn't tell you everything." The man handed Daniel a phone. Daniel glanced at the screen, then shook his head and handed it back. "Not now," he said quietly. Whispers rippled through the platform. Did he say Carter? As in Daniel Carter? The billionaire? Sarah's face drained of color. She stepped back, pulling Lily close. "You're..." Her voice trembled. "You're him." Daniel turned to face her fully. "Yes," he said. "I am." Silence fell between them. Thick, painful silence. Sarah's chest tightened, embarrassment and hurt flooding in all at once. "So this was what?" she asked, voice breaking. "A game. A story you tell yourself when you're bored of being rich." Daniel's eyes filled, not with anger but with regret. "No," he said firmly. "This was the first real thing I've felt in years." He crouched down in front of Lily, bringing himself to her eye level. "Lily," he said softly, "do you remember when you gave me your $5? She nodded. "You were sad." "I was," Daniel said. "And I didn't tell you who I was because I didn't want your kindness to change. I didn't want mine to be mistaken for pity." Lily thought for a moment. "Are you still sad?" she asked. Daniel smiled sadly. "Not as much." She smiled back. "Good." Sarah wiped tears from her eyes, torn between pride and pain. Daniel stood and faced her. "I didn't help you because I'm rich," he said. "I helped you because your daughter reminded me of something I'd forgotten. That dignity matters. That people aren't problems to fix." One of the men stepped forward. "Sir, your schedule." "Can wait," Daniel said sharply. He turned back to Sarah. "I'd like to offer you a position at my company," he said. "Not charity. A real job. One you've already proven you deserve." Sarah stared at him, stunned. "And housing," he added quickly. "Temporary. Until you're steady." Lily tugged at her mother's sleeve. "Mommy, he's nice." Sarah laughed through her tears. She looked at Daniel, really looked at him. Not the billionaire, not the stranger, but the man who had shared a diner booth, who had listened, who had treated her like a human being. Okay, she said finally. But only if we're equals. Daniel smiled, relief washing over his face. Deal. Just then, Daniel's phone buzzed again. A video call. He answered. A little boy's face filled the screen. Dad, Noah said excitedly. Where are you? Daniel turned the phone toward Lily. This is Lily, he said. Remember I told you about her? Noah's eyes widened. You're the girl. Lily waved enthusiastically. Hi. Can we meet? Noah asked hopefully. Daniel looked at Sarah. Sarah nodded. As the train pulled into the station, Lily squeezed her mother's hand. See, Mommy, she whispered. I told you sharing helps. The doors opened, and 4 lives stepped onto a new path. One built not on money, but on kindness. 6 months later, the $5 bill sat in a small wooden frame on Lily's nightstand. It was wrinkled and faded now, but beneath it was a handwritten note in Lily's careful letters. The day kindness came back. Life had changed, quietly, steadily. Sarah woke each morning with purpose instead of panic. She walked into work with confidence, no longer afraid of being seen or spoken over. She earned her place, just as Daniel had promised. Lily and Noah sat side by side in school, trading snacks and secrets. They argued like siblings and laughed like they'd always known each other. Daniel came home earlier these days. He listened more. He smiled more. The heavy silence that once filled his house had softened, replaced by homework questions, shared dinners, and small moments that mattered. One evening, as the 4 of them waited at a train platform, not out of desperation this time, but for a short trip together, Lily looked up at Daniel. Do you still have my $5? She asked. Daniel nodded. I always will. Lily smiled, satisfied. Sarah watched them, her heart full. Sometimes, she thought, the world doesn't change because of power or wealth. Sometimes it changes because a little girl chose kindness. And a family was formed because someone finally noticed.